Hi, my name is Preston Oltman with Heinen Brothers Ag, and today I want to walk you through a few planter setup checklist items that we need to make sure we're taking care of before we go and get ready for the field at the start of the year. So one of the first items I always like to check are the parallel arms and parallel arm bushings. If we get excessive play in either those parallel arms or the bushings, we can see some row chatter and start to see some inconsistent seed placement. So the easiest way to check that is to step behind the planter row unit, grab at the bottom of the shank, and then just see if you can wiggle it up and down or side to side. As your parallel arms and bushings get worn, you will see excessive play and you'll be able to hear it rattle around and watch that unit move. If we're getting a lot of movement, then we need to at the very least replace those bushings, if not the entire upper and lower parallel arm. Once we've looked at that parallel arm, typically I'll move down to the row cleaning systems. Basically, we want to make sure that these row cleaners are always spinning freely, greased, and operating the way we want to, whether that is on a fixed or a floating type system. So once I've looked at the row cleaners, I will then move on to the opening discs. What we want to do is slide two business cards, one on the top and one on the bottom, and measure that distance between these two cards. We should have between 1.5 and 2 inches for that contact point. If we do not have 1.5 to 2 inches of a contact, or we have more, then we need to either add or remove shims from inside of that opening disc to get the proper spacing. Next, with the opening disc, we want to look at the overall diameter as well as the bevel on the edge of that disc. So Deere discs factory come at 15 inches. If the diameter of that disc gets down to below 14.5, that disc needs to be replaced. Also, if we see that we lose that bevel on the edge of the disc, we also will want to replace those. Once we've looked at the opening disc, we then want to look at our opening disc scrapers, just basically to make sure that that spring is providing enough tension on the inside and holding that scraper tied up against the opening disc. After the opening discs, we will then look at the gauge wheel and gauge wheel spacing. So for these gauge wheels, we want them to just slightly turn, but kind of stop themselves on that disc when they're in the down position. If we then lift them up, they should turn more freely, but still just slightly contact that disc blade. That will prevent mud from building up inside of the tire and provide proper firming action. Once we've looked at the opening discs and the gauge wheels, we then move on to the back of the unit and look at the closing wheel A-arm. So with this A-arm, no different than the parallel arms, we want to check these bushings and make sure that we don't have any excessive play. So with that, we'll want to grab the back of the unit and try to slide it left to right and up and down. If you get excessive play left to right in that bushing, we either need to replace those bushings or replace the A-arm altogether. If those bushings are worn, that closing wheel A-arm will not track correctly and will not sit directly over top of the seed trench the way we would like it to. After the closing wheel A-arms, we'll move on to the closing wheel discs. So first we want to check that bearing and just make sure that those discs are spinning freely. If those are spinning freely, then we then want to look at the spacing between the discs. With a spoked system and on contour planning, we want to go with the front hole on these Deere A-arms and have about 1.5 to 2 inches of space between those spikes. With a smooth wheel system, we actually want to use the back hole on these A-arms and space them about 1 to 1.5 inches. So these are just a few of the key items I like to look at with these John Deere row units prior to going out to the field. Making sure that all of these items are set correctly helps ensure a successful planting season for us.